Welcome in to Cover Crimson. My name is EG. This is Clint, and we are so close to game day, guys. We are sitting here under 50 hours from kick, Alabama at Georgia. It doesn't really get better than this when we talk about college football. Clint, how excited are you?
I'm excited. I think it's weird or strange at least. Anytime, and I've brought this up before, but the fact that it's still happening, the fact that a lot of people publicly are betting on Georgia, and the fact that the betting line is not moving more in Georgia's favor. In fact, if anything, it's moving more in Alabama's favor. When I have seen that in the past, the 2021 SEC championship game after the Iron Bowl is the first one that comes to mind. Like my dad, he knows a lot about it. And I remember him telling me it's very weird. I think it was like a 6.5 point line, and everybody was betting on Georgia after the way Alabama looked in that Iron Bowl, especially with the offensive line and trying to keep Bryce Young protected. And yet the line didn't move. It stayed at 6.5. And so and then of course, Alabama ended up winning that game, ended up winning big actually. And so ever since then, I've been paying attention. Michigan, a couple of years ago in the college football playoff, everybody was picking Alabama to win that game. The Vegas didn't really move the line. Michigan ends up winning. This year with Illinois and Indiana, it was, I think, Indiana was a 5.5 point favorite, despite the fact that they were ranked number 19 and Illinois was number 9. A lot of people thought that's really weird. We're definitely going to take some points if you're going to give them to us with a top 10 ranked team. They end up losing 63-10 to Indiana. So sometimes this stuff is like Vegas just knows more than we do. Not saying that's necessarily the case here, but it's something that I always monitor in these massive matchups. And I have found it pretty strange because, on paper, with the way Alabama looked in week 1, a lot of people, it's understandable why a lot of people would pick Georgia. But for whatever reason, Vegas doesn't seem to agree right now. So we'll have to wait and see what that means. But that certainly made me more intrigued.
Yeah.
And, just something to monitor for sure.
I will say I'm a better poker player when it comes to my gambling than sports betting. I try and stay away from the sports betting because my money definitely goes to my buy-ins at the poker table. But with that being said, I do think it's interesting for you to point these things out because Vegas seems to know, and I have a deep respect for Vegas and their lines and then their predictions. So I think at the end of the day, what we're all realizing is this is going to be an instant classic in Athens. And having that anticipation, being at the facility this week and knowing the treat that we get this weekend and really the entire slate of college football this weekend is awesome. I don't know if you've been looking at that, but starting on Friday until Saturday night where Alabama takes on Georgia, Oregon takes on Penn State, like it's just a really solid weekend. So even though I'll be in Athens, preparing for game day, I will definitely be keeping up with the college football scores around the country.
Yeah, this is what you live for. We've said this all week. Every time we get on these here airwaves, I'm going to say it because it's this is why we do what we do. When you're trying to break down, okay, how does Alabama match up against Louisiana Monroe? How do they match up against Wisconsin? It's pretty much they have such an advantage in so many areas. It's not that much fun right now. It's trying to dig out, who has the advantages where, how much does that mean? And that just from our perspective, and I think consuming the content, it's just a lot better conversations going back and forth. And you actually run some risk. Like if you pick Alabama here, it's not a sure thing that they're going to win. So, that makes it all the more fun because you could end up having some trash talking going the other way. But I love that. I love this game. I love the fact that we're getting to continue this in Athens. Like that's one thing that Georgia fans have been very vocal about. Oh, they haven't had to come to Athens, during the Kirby Smart era. We're now reaching a point where, they'll get that opportunity. So we'll see what they do with it.
Yeah, listen, I'm excited. And Clint is going to give us his 3 keys to the game. We could probably give 30 keys to the game, if we're being honest, because you just mentioned, how evenly matched this team is in some ways, but also you and Jimmy did a great job. And I want to highlight this before we get going because we try and give you guys the best content on Cover Crimson. I think that we do a pretty dang good job of it. And you and Jimmy really went through and gave us, these nuanced answers to where Georgia has the edge against Bama, but where Bama has the edge against Georgia. And it's not your typical, knee-jerk things that anyone that kind of follows college football is going to be aware of. So make sure you check out that video after you watch here with us. But with that being said, Clint, what is your first key to today, or not today's game, I wish it was, to Saturday's game?
for me, the number one place where it has to start, because I'll get more into the weeds with some of these others, but where it has to start is intensity on the road. This road monkey that is on Alabama's back. This would be a great opportunity. Georgia really wants this. Their fans really want this. In a lot of ways, they need this as far as the narratives, and you can't get the Alabama problem solved. It doesn't matter who's the coach or where the games play. Like the fact that this is in Athens, the fact that it's no longer Nick Saban, a lot of people right now think Georgia have a real chance. And a lot of people are saying, if Georgia doesn't do it now, when are they going to do it? When does things line up for them to finally beat Alabama consistently? They did get the national championship win when there was a rematch. But as far as having to prepare for a new team, when is Georgia finally going to be able to get that off their backs? For Alabama, the big problem has been the road, and just you've played great football in Bryant-Denny Stadium, but taking that intensity, like you're going to face adversity when you're facing a hostile crowd, and something doesn't go your way. It's magnified because of the electricity and the atmosphere in the stadium. You've got to be able to take that, remain focused, keep your intensity, don't get rattled. That is something that Alabama has had a problem with so far and really it goes beyond the Kalen DeBoer era. Like Nick Saban, the last couple of years with him, there was some problems on the road. So you don't want to say, oh, this is because it's no longer Nick Saban, because that was a problem. But this would be a great chance for Alabama to make a road statement. And if they can bring the same intensity and consistency that they brought against Louisiana Monroe, Wisconsin, Alabama can absolutely win this football game.
Yeah, I think one thing that I do want to point out in that, though, is against Wisconsin, we saw some of that intensity taper off there in the third and fourth quarter. And, we were able to talk to Ryan Williams after that game, and he actually said a lot of that started with him in terms of the drops. So not the intensity, but the drops, he said that he felt like that was contagious, and he apologized for that, took accountability. But that's something we do need to highlight, is that, yes, there was really great performances against ULM and Wisconsin. You had this sense of urgency, but even against Wisconsin, it started to taper off. And so I think that that's something that against Georgia, you can't afford to do that in Athens. You just can't. And one thing I do also want to highlight is what Coach Cap said yesterday. I was able to sit down with him, and he had a great line. And I think this plays into what we're talking about here with intensity and being on the road facing adversity. And he said, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall back on your training.
I love that.
So good. And you guys, you can really apply that to anything, not just sports, not just, football, not just, being an athlete. That's really in life. And I think that was something that really stuck out to me in that interview, because it's true. When Alabama hits the road to take on Georgia in Athens, and, it's with any team, you can think, okay, I'm going to have the adrenaline pumping because I'm in a hostile environment on the road. So, I may not practice, go 100% on Wednesday because I know that I'm going to have that extra juice come Saturday. Outside of the opening drive, that adrenaline levels out. And that's what Coach Cap was saying, was what do you do when that happens? You rely on your training. And if you didn't go hard in practice on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, you're not going to be able to suddenly find that in yourself if you haven't been training to do it. So I love that. I'm applying that to my own life, a little free, life tip there. You don't rise to the occasion, you fall back on your training. So I thought that was interesting. I think that's going to be really, really important with this game.
Yeah, I mean, and that's such a great point. And, kind of my thing is understand things are going to go wrong. It could be, a false start that puts you behind the sticks. It could be early. The crowd really gets going. They know they've kind of, the noise and everything has kind of affected you already. And so they get louder and it gets more intense. And it's like, uh-oh, here we go with some of this. You just can't let it bother you. And what I will say, what can't happen is if some of that stuff does end up impacting you or gives Georgia an early lead or something like that, understand the one thing we're not going to do is start becoming timid, start thinking too much and things like that. If you're going to make a mistake, do it going 100 miles an hour. Go find somebody and hit somebody, because I think that was the biggest problem that people had against Florida State. Was sometimes good teams play good football, and then it's just a lot of circumstances ended up favoring them on a certain or any given day. But at the same time, it's how you respond to that in the way that they were loafing, and you could just clearly tell that they seemed disinterested. And I think that was the biggest concern. That can never be a problem again. That's what I mean when I say be intense and maintain consistency through adversity. because this is a good football team. They got some hitters on defense. They got some guys who love to hit you on offense. Take the fight to Georgia and make them be the ones to respond and see how they like getting hit in the mouth. I think that is absolutely going to be a massive key, especially in a hostile road environment.
Another element to this is going off what you said. One thing that Kalen DeBoer has been preaching to his team is being so intentional with everything that they do.
That's right.
Being intentional with how they're getting to practice, being intentional with, like, even if you're taking notes more intentionally, that's what he's wanting to see. And that's what the focal point, especially coming off the bye, because I asked him, how do you maintain the focus and intensity that you expect coming off of a bye week? Because while there are so many benefits to it, there's in my opinion, I would say, a little bit of a letdown because you're not getting that game day experience. So you're having more time to prepare and you have to fight off that relief syndrome or keep even that kind of conservation of energy because you have more time. You can't do that. And so that's one thing that I know that this staff has been preaching is being so intentional. And I've heard it so many times, keep the main thing the main thing. Keep the main thing the main thing. If I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times. And I think this all plays into how they handle road adversity. And this is the greatest opportunity that you're going to get this season, in my opinion, to show what you're made of, especially coming off of your last road trip, which was FSU.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something, I don't know, back in the day, I was never very good at it, but me and buddies used to play disc golf, right? So there was something where, you throw off of a tee box, you throw your shot, and there was these two trees right off the tee box. And for whatever reason, everybody would always hit those trees. I had a massive problem with it. And someone one time, they told me your mind can't process negative. So if you say, don't hit the tree, you're going to hit the tree every time because your mind reads it as hit the tree. Instead, focus on hit the gap. And as soon as I started doing that, the tree was never an issue again. Now, I have a lot of other issues when it came to disc golf anyways, but at least that problem where it's embarrassing when you throw and you immediately slap a tree and now it's rolling, but you got further to go on your second shot. But it's the same thing where it's like, don't worry about anything that's going wrong. If it does go wrong, don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution. Keep your mind in the right place and understand. If you go in understanding, as much as I want to play this game in my head, we're playing it on a football field. So how I envision it going is not going to be how it goes. I've got to be able to roll with those punches and make sure that, if it's Ty Simpson, if it's Bray Hubbard, if it's a lot of, Caden Proctor, making sure and understanding that when you play good football players, sometimes the good football players make good plays, and it's okay. It's a matter of going out there and moving past the adversity. Ty Simpson, I think that was a problem for him early in his career. It seems like he has done a very good job of starting to move past that, where he doesn't allow negative things to start to stack on him. And I think that is why he is more prepared now to go into Athens than he has ever been in his entire career.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that, that's going to be a focal point of mine is how, and we talked about it on the show, is how does Ty respond in that environment? How will he look? And I think you're nailing it. That he is primed more so because of the learning experience of FSU, because of the conversations between him and Coach Grubb of him wanting to be prepared more for the moment. And this is, like I said, the opportunity for them to show that to people. And I love what Deontay Lawson had to say in media this week. He said, we've realized we're not untouchable. There's a certain humility that comes along with that as well.
It's a great point. That is a fantastic point. And it's something that a lot of guys, I mean, especially when you're at a place like Alabama, one of the things that Nick Saban did the best job of that I've ever seen is getting guys to understand you're not going to win a single game because of the color jersey that you wear or the university that you represent. You've got to do the things behind the scenes as far as preparation, because and that's one thing. It didn't matter if it was a massive game, number one versus number two. It didn't matter if it was an unranked opponent. That consistency was always there. One thing I'll give this coaching staff a lot of credit for, they have, up to this point, have always done a phenomenal job of game planning and having their guys prepared for these types of games. Now, there will, like we said this earlier, I think last week maybe, if you do somehow get past Georgia, then the question immediately turns to, okay, how do you respond to that moving forward? But for now, you've got to go out there and continue to do what you have mostly done in these big games, which is execute a good game plan And even against Tennessee last year, I understand guys have off days, but I don't know if we'll ever really know how good that offensive game plan was, because it just wasn't Jalen's day, and he just wasn't throwing with accuracy. It wasn't just a Jalen Milroe problem, but the defense played well. And when your quarterback can't get the football to the playmakers, doesn't matter what you dial up, it's not going to work. So we can say, oh, it's worked pretty much every step of the way, other than the Tennessee game. I would even argue that we don't even know what that game would look like had Jalen Milroe had the type of performance that he was certainly capable of having. So that certainly is a pretty big difference.
Last thing I'll add to this before we move on is, I think one element to this is also, you have to know there's going to be the non-controllables with a game like this. And you alluded to that with sometimes good football players just make good plays. So I think for Alabama, it's having as many controllables as possible in terms of your discipline and those things that you can control. And when uncontrollable happens, you're more equipped to handle it because you've done your prep work up until this point to respond to it, not react to it. If that makes sense.
Right. Yes, 100%. That's anticipate things going wrong and understanding that it's all about the next play, good or bad. Just because you make a great play, that doesn't really matter either. It's all about what you do from this point forward. And I think Kirby does a good job with that with Georgia. A lot can go bad, but he's always got those guys believing if we start right now, we can turn this around. And that's something that whether Alabama comes out swinging or they find themselves behind, either way, you got to be able to handle both situations. So, yeah, I'll be curious to see how that works out.
All right, key number 2 for us, Clint.
I think everybody is on board with, are going to be on board with this one. That's keep Ty Simpson or get Ty Simpson as comfortable as possible. Keep him protected. Provide him with some complementary football, whether that's being able to run the football, whether that's playing good defense and taking as much pressure off of him from that side of things, where he's not stepping on the field feeling like, hey, every time I touch the field, I'm going to have to do something to help us score because our defense can't stop him. Or that's Ryan Grubb dialing up some things, whether it be early. I understand if you want to go into a hostile environment and do some safer things to try to get his confidence up and kind of get his, his rhythm going a little bit, but also don't be afraid. I think this dude's got special talent. I think him just throwing the football, the way it snaps off of his wrist, has a lot of playmaking ability. He can play within the offense. And so if you ask him to go in there and manage the game kind of early, I certainly think he can do that, but also trust him to go out there and try to make some plays early. And because if he can do that, then his confidence starts to ooze and this guy will be, unstoppable. So make Ty Simpson as comfortable as you possibly can in whatever ways that you can, because if you can do that, I think you are going to get a fantastic quarterback performance against what I view as somewhat of a vulnerable Georgia secondary.
Yeah. I asked Parker Brailsford about this actually, because him and Ty have a great relationship, not only on the field, but also off the field. How important is that connection? What does it look like this week? And he said, it's going to come down to trust. Everyone has to trust each other in this situation. Ty has to trust us. We have to trust Ty. And that plays right into keeping him comfortable, because we've seen how successful he can be when he has time in the pocket to go through his progressions, to make that incredible throw that is just threaded right through. And also on top of that, you have the trust of your receivers that they're going to catch the ball, et cetera. And so I think that that's going to be huge because, against FSU, we didn't see that as much as we saw in the following 2 games. Well, go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that's a great point. Alabama found it did get up early, but then from that point forward, very quickly in the first half, it found itself down multiple scores. And so when I say, help Ty Simpson out as much as possible, putting him in a situation where he's down multiple scores, he's going out there and he's thinking, man, I want to throw this ball, but if I throw this ball and it's intercepted, this game could be over. If it's a back and forth in Athens, against Georgia, and your defense can't stop them and their defense can't stop you, Ty Simpson's going out there every time. And there's this sense of, now, if I take this chance and Georgia capitalizes, that could be the difference in this game. All it takes is 1 or 2 stops in those types of games. When I say from a defensive perspective, you can take a lot of pressure off of him saying, hey, we're stopping these guys. We're getting off the field for you. Maybe you score a touchdown. Now we go out there and we get a stop. You're able to go out there. Hey, go build on it. And if you can do that, I think he's going to be willing to take more of those. He's not going to do unnecessary risks, but these gunslinger quarterbacks, especially when you've got the arm strength like Ty and the accuracy and the ball placement and the playmaking ability, these guys can make some special plays. but you just never want them going out there, or at least, for a lot of guys, it's better in that type of environment to not make those guys feel like I'm going to have to do these types of things if we want to win a football game, because then guys start pressing, and that typically doesn't bode well.
Yeah, I think so too. We have to talk about the receivers in that conversation as well because, they also would feel that added pressure as well. And I think that when you look at how deep that room is, there's so much talent. And I'm so excited to see how they're utilized. I think it was so important against Wisconsin for Ty and Ryan to get back in that rhythm for really the first time. Obviously, we've seen Jeremy be so consistent, even going back to last season. But Ryan to get in that, routine with Ty was great. You need both of them to continue that momentum, but then you need a guy like Isaiah Horton, in my opinion, to kind of take it to that next level. And with this game, the foundation that Alabama has built, I think that is really solid. But against a team like Georgia and the SEC in general, you have to have guys that are right on the cusp take that next step in a game like this. So I'm looking at guys like Isaiah Horton, who I think is really close. We haven't seen everything from him. A guy like LT Overton on the defensive side of the ball to continue to affect the quarterback, but in a way that is more than just a quarterback pressure that ends with a sack. And I think that when you look at the receivers, they've already been such a solid group, but like having a few guys on both sides of the ball take that next step in this game is what can really be a difference maker.
Yeah, I think so many guys have flashed. I mean, obviously, Jeremy has been Mr. Consistent.
Yeah.
Ryan, he's going to have the drops. I know that's something that he's certainly working on, but that's up to this point. I've kind of accepted that's just part of his game. You just hope that it doesn't happen in any sort of critical moments. But he's got the ability to completely change the game, and I mean, he proved that last year against Georgia on multiple occasions. And so him bringing that element, Isaiah Horton's really starting to get comfortable.
Yeah.
He's starting to get healthy. His relationship with Ty, the timing on some of that stuff, it looks great. But then you've even got like guys like Lyseer Brooks and Rico Scott who have done some things. I know Georgia's going into this game thinking there's a lot with this Alabama passing game. What I'm hoping is that Jam can, at least to some extent, bring more of that to Alabama's run game, whether it be, just Jam being back, maybe it's Jaden Roberts being a couple of weeks further removed from the concussion where he can play a little bit more. Maybe it's just this offensive line gelling a little bit more. If they can provide any sort of run game, complementary run game, and I'm not saying, hey, go rush for 200 plus yards in Athens on Georgia's defense. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in some of those critical moments where Georgia presents opportunities, they take certain things away from the passing game, you make them pay for it on the ground. Like if they can do that with any sort of consistency, and maybe Jam Miller can help with that, and maybe even the short, quick passes that are an extension of your run game that are really, him throwing the football, even something like that can really start to put strain on Georgia's defense. I do think that this group of weapons for Ty Simpson, we had a lot of expectations coming into the season. This is going to be the first time that everybody has been seemingly healthy and available so far this season. I'm excited to see what that ends up looking like, because you're also getting Dan Lewis back at tight end, we think.
Yeah, that's true. I think the tight end room is maybe one of the most understated rooms for me, especially with this offense, because the way that Ryan Grubb utilizes the tight end, it's really fun, in my opinion, to watch. I think that's a room that definitely has been pretty consistent. I mean, we saw against FSU with Josh Cuevas. So it's, that's an element of this offense that makes it even more balanced. But, adding that run game element is going to be important for a game like this. That brings us to our third key of the game, Clint. Let us know what you got.
For me, getting to the other side of the football, stop the run. Georgia really got some things going over the course of that game against Tennessee. It took a lot of pressure off of Gunnar Stockton. I thought he responded really well in a hostile environment. But what I say I hope Ty gets from Alabama's run game, I'm not saying you need to do it to the extent that Georgia did against Tennessee, but having that run game available to you, having a stable of running backs who can take pressure off of the passing game in that hostile environment where you can kind of control tempo and how the game's playing out. I mean, I think that they did a really good job. The defense didn't. Obviously, Tennessee was, they were down multiple scores, but the fact that he could at least lean on a complimentary run game really helped him in his confidence, knowing that the offense could consistently score as well. Alabama needs to be able to stop the run. You're getting Tim Keenan back. I think that's huge. Granted, we don't know how healthy he'll be. Maybe he'll be 100%. Maybe he won't be. Maybe he'll be on a pitch count. Maybe he'll be fully available. We don't know. But either way, getting that type of presence and that type of leader back in this type of environment and having, he's been a great leader on the sidelines,
awesome.
But there's a reason that all your top leaders don't get to stick around and be sideline people. There's something about having guys in full pads on the field with you going through that war, that battle, that really allows that leadership to flourish. So getting that type of guy back for this game is absolutely critical. Alabama's got some good run stoppers. The run fits have been inconsistent, but I'm hoping that Alabama playing on the road, that helps the home team's offense, but that also helps the road team's defense.
Yeah, defense.
Because they're not cheering while they're out there. The communication's a lot easier. So I'm hoping that through some of that, Alabama won't be looking to the sidelines trying to get a call in, trying to get it relayed to everybody. And, I hope that ends up helping them. You've got to be, the more you can stop the run and try to make Georgia one-dimensional, which I'm not saying you're going to be able to shut down their run game, but I'm saying do the best job you can to try to make them as one-dimensional as possible, starts to put the pressure on Gunnar Stockton. And if you're doing what you need to do offensively, scoring some points, now the pressure starts to become on Gunnar Stockton, where it's like, I got to go out here and make a bunch of plays if we want to have a chance. Then, some guys respond well to that. Not everybody does. I think Gunner's a warrior. I think he's a guy that you definitely want in those situations, but even those types of players, they don't always come through for you in those types of games. So I'm hoping that Alabama can go out there and stop the run primarily on defense and then kind of take it from there.
Yeah, a few things on that. I think, too, when you talk about, pressuring Gunnar Stockton to kind of forcing some plays, I really like Alabama's secondary when that has to happen against Georgia's receivers. Agreed. So that's, an advantage point there. And I also think when it comes to the defense as a whole for Bama, we've already talked about it. They've done a good job at affecting the quarterback. That's been something that, pressuring the quarterback has been solid. But with a game like this, Gunnar Stockton's a lot more mobile than Carson Beck was last season. So that's going to be, when you're looking back to last season, what can you learn? Well, one thing that is glaringly obvious is that this isn't Carson Beck in the pocket. So pressuring him, yes, but getting him on the ground is going to be so important on top of, stopping the run as well.
That is such a great point, EG. And a lot of fans, they want better finishes. And you saw it against Wisconsin. I mean, 4 sacks, a lot of pressure. Yeah. Yanze Pierre by himself had 5 pressures. He had 2 in the game before and none against Florida State. And so, I think he's coming on strong. Quay Russaw, we saw him be able to turn the corner on the right tackle and get a sack for himself. London Simmons provided some of that on the interior. And then, of course, LT Overton. It was great to see him finish.
Yes.
And so, he's always affected the quarterback. And there's a reason, despite the fact that he does not have a lot of career sacks, he is still being talked about as a potential first-round draft pick, and it is because of how disruptive he is. So at some point, that's gonna click, and hopefully he becomes a better finisher. Alabama fans are just hoping that doesn't come in a couple of years when he's on the NFL level. It comes this year, and I think Wisconsin was a great step in that direction. Gunnar Stockton is elusive. He's not Tommy Castellanos, though. Yeah. He's not going to be a guy who's really slippery and very explosive. If you let him get up a kind of get momentum going, yeah, he's a little bit tougher to bring down, but I don't think he's got this short area quickness and stuff. Hopefully they can affect him and bring him down for sure.
Another element to this, Tim Keenum being back, I was talking to Deontay Lawson, and I love the consensus is that TK makes the defense just better as a whole, every position group. And Deontay saying he makes my job easier. Like, there are so many good things to Tim Keenan from the coaching staff. It was Freddie Rich said he can fill 2 gaps by himself. Like, he is everything that you want. And so I'm really looking forward to that, because I think that's going to bring an added edge to the defense. Because when you think about it, he didn't travel to FSU. He wasn't in Tallahassee. So the first game that you're getting him back is on the road. You can't ask for anything better than that. And like I said, the positive reinforcement I heard from both, coaching staff and players about who Tim Keenan is as a leader, but also as a player, what he can do on the field is great. So this is definitely an element to Saturday that I'm looking forward to, because he was so great on the sidelines. We saw the videos, we saw the interaction. Now we get to see him, prove it even more so on the field.
That's 100% correct. And this is something that I've always used to describe when Alabama lost its 2 receivers, during that 2021 season. When you lost John Mechie against Georgia in the SEC championship, you had to adjust on the fly. But Alabama already had kind of positioned themselves. They were, that game. And then you had an entire, several weeks before the college football playoffs started where you can start to adjust to life without John Mechie? And how are you going to, who was going to step up? Then when you lose Jameson Williams in the national championship, it's like now everything that you tried to pivot to, you end up losing that guy as well. That's tough to do. That's a tough situation for everybody to be in. With Tim Keenan, no, it didn't happen in a game, but it happened Tuesday of game week. You were finally getting ready to play a game. You're one of your defensive leaders, the guy that you kind of build a lot of your defensive front around and just what he can do. You go from having that to having a redshirt freshman in Jeremiah Beeman and a true freshman in London Simmons. Now, after, Jeremiah Beeman gets lost for the season, then you got to pivot again. And then it's like, okay, you were trying to adjust to life without Tim Keenan. Then you started to try to adjust to life without Jeremiah Beeman, which means a true freshman at the start, which means an undersized, more situational type of player. And Isaiah Faga had to become your rotational piece instead of a situational piece. And I think that Alabama, they adjusted pretty well, but that's a lot to deal with. Getting Tim Keenan back and allowing those other guys to kind of, become your rotational piece and then more of a situational piece, I think that makes the entire defense better. And one thing, we talk about the run-stopping ability, and that's going to be critical against Georgia, in my opinion, but it's also the pocket collapsing ability. When you're Gunnar Stockton, you're trying to stand tall in the pocket, step up into your throws, and you've got this guy who's, barreling down on you, and he's, your offensive linemen are getting driven back into you. Where are you going to step up and throw to? Like, having that type of piece, he's not this dynamic pass rusher by any means, but that pocket collapsing ability can be really, really critical, especially when it's on early downs where it's more of run downs and they end up throwing the football. Having a guy who can apply that pressure, maybe try to flush him from the pocket one side or the other. Now you've got edge rushers who can close and maybe make a sack. I think getting that element back could help improve Alabama's defense.
You don't get this insight anywhere else except from Clint Lamb. Like, it's so good, guys. Like, I'm getting so excited to, just experience this game because we've been talking about it for so long. We'll have all of the content for you. So make sure you're following us. If you're watching this, please subscribe. That helps us tremendously. And we just love to have you part of the Cover Crimson family. But before we sign off here, Clint, what is your final score prediction for Saturday?
I've gone back and forth. I mean, I really have been and granted, that Vegas thing's got my, it's got the wheels going up there a little bit. But I mean, I will say, I think any time that the games like this are close and I can find justifiable reasons why Alabama will win or why Georgia will win, a lot of times, if I'm speaking candidly, I'm going to end up leaning Alabama in the end. But it's not, I don't really view that as bias because it's what I truly believe. Like by Saturday, there could be some things. It's like, well, still think it's going to be really close, but I actually probably lean Georgia now. Right now, I could easily see, I think the over-under is 52.5. Last year, it was lower than that. I think 49.5, ended up going way over that with a 41-34 final score. I'm going to go 34-28 Alabama. I think they end up coming away. I think it's going to be kind of a back-and-forth battle. I think, Georgia's going to have some wins, but I think Ty Simpson and the offense do enough late to end up getting Alabama the win. Are you going to go with a score prediction, or are you just going to?
I'm not. This is my you know me. I keep a tight lip when it comes to these elements. Yes. But with that being said, you heard it here first, and it's just going to be a great game. And I think that we're all excited to see kind of what Alabama can do, right? Because this is a great opportunity coming off of, two solid games, but then you also have, the egg from week one to see what this team is made of, how they respond to road adversity. And I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing, the fruit of a lot of labor over the last 3.5, 4 weeks to prepare for the next opportunity like this. So with that being said, like we said earlier, follow us, tag us. We want to hear from you guys. If you have questions, we try to get to them all, and we really do love hearing from you guys. I love looking through about what you guys were up to the last time Alabama played Georgia in Athens. So listen, we are a family here at Cover Crimson, and we want to make sure that, you feel part of it. Clint, is there anything else that we need to add before we let these fine people go on with their day?
No, just appreciate everybody hopping on here with us and just enjoying this week. This has been a lot of fun. We'll obviously be reacting one way or another. Hopefully we're all hopping on here and celebrating next week, but if not, then we'll try to help everybody get through it. So we appreciate everybody hopping on, and we will talk to you guys soon.
I may not suit up on Saturdays anymore, but I'm still in the game. In here, I call the plays. make adjustments, and lay it on the line. Want to feel that fire, that rush? Then you've got to get in the game. I used to say it in the tunnel, and I still say it now. Let's roll.